Was the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach decision actually a robbery? I personally don't think so, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why. And for those who love the sweet science like myself, I'm gonna give you my breakdown of why the fight played out how it did afterwards. Let's get into it. First off, hats off to Lamont Roach. That dude fought a hell of a fight and cemented himself as a new top guy in the lightweight division. Most people, including myself, thought Tank would find a way to knock him out just like he does everyone else. But Roach showed us he wasn't going out like that, and that he came to actually win. Now let's get into why exactly that decision wasn't a robbery. You see, this was an extremely close fight with a lot of rounds that could have gone either way. So in close fights like this, where the scoring can be very subjective, I don't call close decisions like 114, 113 or draws robbery. Only time I say a robbery is when it's blatantly obvious that they picked the wrong guy or they just have a crazy scorecard. But in that Tank versus Roach fight, calling it a draw is understandable because at first I myself scored it a draw. You see, I rewatched the fight back twice. In the first rewatch, I scored it 6-5 for Roach, with round 9 being a draw because Tank took the voluntary knee. Not because he was hurt, but because hair chemicals got in his eyes, which should have still been called a knockdown either way. So that's 1 point off for Tank. But besides that knee, I thought Tank won that round, so I took 1 point off for Roach, making it 9-9. So if I got a 6-5 Roach with round 9 a draw, that would add up to a 114 draw on the scorecards, just like the judges decided. But you see, that was after my first rewatch. But the second time I rewatched it, I gave that round 9 a Roach due to him just landing the better shots, which would make my scoring go from 6-5 Roach to 7-5 Roach. So based on how I scored it, Roach did win that fight. But I don't blame the judges for calling it a draw because I came to the same conclusion after the first time I rewatched it. If y'all want to blame anyone, don't blame the judges, but instead the ref. That referee really messed up bad, man. He initially started counting when Tank went to the corner, then just stopped counting when he realized Tank wasn't hurt, and just gave him a warning that he can't do that. Like, what kind of shit is that? I've never seen a ref start counting, then decide to stop out of nowhere. So blame him, not the judges, because if he would have made the right call, the judges would have been forced to give it to Roach due to the math of the knockdown being included in the scoring. Let me know what you think about the decision in the comments. Let me know if any of y'all had it a draw at first like I did. Now, for my fellow lovers of the sweet science, let's dive into this fight. This was an extremely entertaining fight from a technical perspective. Let's start off by looking into what Lamont Roach did to be able to have the success he had. Lamont Roach's best weapons the whole fight was his hooks. He was able to catch Tank clean a few times with it. He would set it up by conditioning Tank with the jab, then he would mix in a hook after the jab. Since they fought a lot at mid-range and on the inside, he was also able to use the hook in different combinations, but especially with the straight cross. There was one exchange in particular that stood out to me where Roach countered Javante with a clean cross and a hard hook combo. That hook and that cross was the two keys to Lamont Roach's offense. That straight cross was also the punch he used to wobble Tank. In that sequence, Tank threw a straight cross, Lamont slipped it and countered it with his own hard straight cross. Speaking of counters, that was another huge factor that led to Roach having the success he had. Roach was able to successfully stand in the pocket and counter Tank Davis the whole night. Tank did a great job going to the body. I'll dive deeper into that in a few. But when Tank would throw the uppercut to the body, Roach would immediately throw the counter lead hook or cross. Roach was just so sharp in there. His catch and shoot game was on point. He would not let Tank land anything freely. He made sure Tank would have to eat something in return every time he landed. But you see, one of the most important reasons Lamont Roach was able to fight so well in the pocket and counter Tank so clean is because of a huge mistake Tank would make. You see, Tank has a bad habit of falling in with his cross, and Lamont Roach made sure he took advantage of that. That was Roach's most successful tactic the whole night. Let Tank throw a straight cross, slip it, and come back with his own straight cross. So Tank's overreaching was a huge reason Roach was able to have such success countering Tank. But I think the biggest deciding factor of why Roach was able to have the success he did and make it to the scorecards was because of his chin. You see, Roach was able to take Tank's best shots, which allowed him to stay in the pocket in front of Tank and trade with him. Roach's chin was really the single most important deciding factor that made the difference between this fight and Tank's previous fights, because as I was rewatching it, I realized the fight was playing out like every other one of Tank's fights, in the sense that it starts off slow, then Tank picks it up in the middle rounds, which also leads to him getting hit more since he's exchanging more frequently. But with these exchanges happening more frequently, Tank ends up landing clean shots. And in this fight, that was no different because he caught Roach with some clean ass hard punches. punches. But the thing is, in all of Tank's previous fights, those clean shots end up knocking people out, which makes all the lost rounds and close swing rounds irrelevant. But in this fight, since he couldn't get the knockout, his style of starting slow with a low output of punches and accumulating a lot of lost or close swing rounds in the beginning came back to haunt him. But now, let's get into what Tank was able to do well. There was a few things Tank did really well in this fight, but the one that stood out to me the most was his body attack. Tank consistently attacked Roach's body the whole fight. The way he would do it was with long straight crosses to the body. He would then mix in hooks to the body behind the cross. When they would get into inside fighting, he did a great job at using his combinations with hooks and uppercuts to the body. Tank also did a phenomenal job of landing counter punches to the body, specifically counter uppercuts. Speaking of counters, just like Lamont Roach had great success counter punching, so did Tank. He would land those counters to the body like I just mentioned, and he also did a great job of landing his own counter straight cross. Tank actually had a lot of success with that straight cross. A big reason he was able to have that much success with it is because of a footwork mistake Roach would make. You see, Roach would try and make Tank miss by backing up in straight lines, but this is a huge mistake in boxing, because if you're backing up in straight lines, if your opponent is smart enough to notice, he can simply just continue to follow you out while throwing straight punches, and they will eventually land, because since you're moving straight back in a line, you're not getting out of the direct path of the straight punches. Instead, it's best to back up diagonally or circle out, because that way you're actually getting out of the direct path of the punches. But since Roach made this mistake, Tank was able to consistently land his straight cross. He was even able to land double straight cross combo multiple times throughout the fight. One thing I also noticed that made it easier for both fighters to land straight crosses and hooks was both Lamont and Tank would switch between high guards and Philly shell. But you see, in the open stance, it's not wise to use the Philly shell because of the holes and issues it has that can be exploited from an open stance fight. The biggest issue in using the Philly shell in an open stance is that you're using your backhand to try and parry or block your opponent's power hand, which is a dangerous game to play, because if you guess wrong on the trajectory of the punch, that could be night-night. And to Tank's credit, when Lamont would go into the high guard, he did a great job of using hooks to try and get around that high guard. Tank definitely landed some clean-ass hooks that would have put a lot of fighters out, but hats off to Roach because his chin was on point that night. He ate them shits like it was nothing. But you see, I really think most people are overreacting when it comes to Tank's performance, because in my opinion, it's not like Tank fought a bad fight. Tank fought how he always fights in my eyes. Obviously, he could have done a lot of things better to have more success, but he definitely didn't fight a bad fight. I think most people are simply overreacting because this is the first time we've seen someone take Tank's best and not fold. Go back and watch some of Tank's fights. It's rarely pure domination from Tank. It's always a good back and forth fight until Tank finds that chin and puts you to sleep. Once he puts them to sleep, it makes everyone forget what was happening before that. This fight was the same in the sense of it was a close, entertaining fight. The only difference is Tank couldn't put him to sleep, so it was just a great close back and forth fight for 12 rounds. But what's next for Tank though? I think it's best if he does an immediate rematch with Roach, and if he KOs Roach, then he fights Shakur. I don't think that Shakur fight will hit the same if he doesn't rematch Roach first. But we all know Tank be playing games. He about his bag. He not really about, you know, the competition and legacy part of boxing. He about his bag, and I respect it. He's a prize fight at the end of the day. So if that Roach rematch doesn't happen immediately, then that Shakur versus Roach fight is definitely what I want to see. Let me know what you think in the comments. But all that being said, he is still an extremely skilled, complete boxer who has the skills required to beat anyone they put in front of him. If you want to learn more about what exactly makes Tank so complete, click on this video right here.